Across lakes, wetlands, roads, a river, and a historic canal, Britain built the longest railway bridge in the United Kingdom. But this bridge was not designed to dominate the landscape. It was designed to move through it. Low above the water, curving across the Colne Valley, and assembled one concrete segment at a time. The Colne Valley Viaduct became one of the most important structures on the HS2 railway. The most dramatic machine on the site was not a train. It was the machine that built the track bed before any train could arrive. A giant launching gantry, a bridge-building machine designed to lift massive precast concrete segments and place them across the valley from above. Below it were lakes, habitats, waterways, roads, and open green space. Above it would one day run high-speed trains. This is how Britain built the UK's longest railway bridge. The Colne Valley Viaduct sits northwest of London, near the edge of the capital, where the HS2 railway has to cross one of the most complex landscapes on its route. This was not a simple open field. It was a patchwork of water and land, lakes, wetlands, road corridors, the River Colne, the Grand Union Canal, and a landscape used by people, shaped by wildlife, and watched closely by communities. For a high-speed railway, this created a very different kind of engineering problem. The route could not twist sharply around every obstacle. It could not rise and fall like a local road, and it could not stop at the edge of the valley. High-speed rail needs smooth geometry. It needs stable support. It needs gentle curves. It needs a structure that keeps the railway alignment precise over a long distance. So engineers had to carry HS2 across the Colne Valley on a viaduct. But not just any viaduct. This structure would be 3.4 kilometers long, or about 2.1 miles. It would become the longest railway bridge in the United Kingdom, and it would carry the railway across land, water, roads, the River Colne, and the Grand Union Canal, while sitting only about 10 meters above the landscape below. That low height is one of the most important parts of the design, because the Colne Valley Viaduct was not built as a towering monument. It was designed as a long, low, gently curved structure, a bridge strong enough for high-speed rail, but restrained enough to sit within the valley. From above, the viaduct appears as a pale concrete line, sweeping across blue water and green land. From the side, it stays close to the landscape, supported by a sequence of slender piers. This was the central tension of the project. The bridge had to be massive in function, but controlled in appearance. Long, but not visually heavy. Strong, but not aggressive. Precise, but shaped around a sensitive place. For high-speed rail, the bridge is not just a crossing. It is part of the railway's geometry. Every curve, every support, every segment, and every connection has to help create a smooth path for trains that will one day cross the valley at high speed. The challenge began long before the deck crossed the water. Before engineers could launch the bridge across the Colne Valley, they had to build the supports below it. The viaduct stands on 56 piers. These piers are the fixed points of the bridge. They transfer the weight of the deck down into the ground. They support the loads of the future railway, and they hold the alignment exactly where it needs to be. Some piers rise from land, others stand near water, beside lakes, or close to waterways. Each one had to be positioned with accuracy, because once the deck began to move forward, the bridge would depend on those supports being ready. A viaduct is not only the deck people see from a distance. It is a full structural system, foundations below ground, piers rising through the landscape, bearings and support zones. A deck that must remain aligned, and eventually, railway systems that must sit on top with the precision required for high-speed operation. So the first stage was about building the invisible strength of the bridge: ground preparation, foundations, reinforcement, concrete, pier shafts, pier heads, surveying, inspection, and repetition across the valley. Each completed pier became one more fixed point in the future route. But once the supports were ready, the project still faced its biggest construction question. How do you build a 3.4-kilometer bridge across lakes, wetlands, roads, and waterways without turning the entire valley into one giant construction platform? A traditional approach could have required heavy temporary works beneath span after span. More access routes, more scaffolding, more cranes working from the ground, more disruption below the bridge. But the Colne Valley Viaduct needed a more controlled method. The valley could not simply become one massive worksite. So engineers built much of the bridge from above. Instead of pouring the entire deck continuously across the valley, the project used precast concrete segments, more than 1,000 of them. Before the bridge crossed the valley, it had to be manufactured like a giant precision kit. The segments were produced at an on-site precast factory, close to the viaduct itself. That decision was critical. Each segment was large, heavy, and carefully shaped. Moving pieces like that across long distances would have created a major logistics challenge. So the project brought production close to the bridge. Inside the precast factory, the viaduct was made piece by piece. Reinforcement was placed. Concrete was poured into molds. Segments were cured. Surfaces were checked. Geometry was inspected. Then the finished pieces were stored, ready to become part of the deck. This was not a simple row of identical blocks. The bridge followed a long, gentle curve. That meant the segments had to work together with precision. Each piece had to match the pieces before and after it. Each one had to fit the bridge's shape. Each one had to continue the railway alignment. Millimeters mattered, because every segment had to continue the long, smooth curve needed for high-speed rail. This is one of the most important ideas in segmental bridge construction. The bridge is not only built on site, it is manufactured before it is assembled. The factory controls the quality. The gantry controls the placement. The piers control the support, and the geometry controls everything. Once the segments were ready, they had to be lifted into position. This is where the launching gantry became the defining machine of the project. HS2 described it as one of the largest bridge-building machines in Europe. It was purpose-built to move along the growing viaduct, lift precast segments, and place them between the piers. The gantry turned the bridge itself into the construction platform. Instead of working from the valley floor everywhere, the machine worked from above. It advanced along the structure. It lifted segments into the air. It held them in position. It helped align them. And it allowed each span to form without needing heavy temporary construction across the entire landscape below. To understand why that mattered, look at the valley beneath the bridge. Water, soft ground, habitats, roads, public spaces, canal crossings, existing infrastructure, restricted access. Every time construction could avoid the ground below, it reduced the need to occupy that space. The launching gantry allowed the viaduct to move forward across the valley, span by span. First, a line of piers had to be complete. Then segments were brought to the launch area. The gantry lifted a segment. The segment was guided into position. Workers checked alignment. The piece was connected to the growing deck. Then another segment followed, and another. Across water, across land, across roads, across the River Colne, across the Grand Union Canal. On camera, a single segment lift can look simple. A concrete piece rises. The gantry holds it. Workers guide it. The segment slides into place. But behind that moment is an entire chain of engineering decisions. The weight of the concrete, the lifting points, the temporary forces on the gantry, the position of the piers, the curve of the deck, the sequence of installation, the wind conditions, the safety of the crew, and the accuracy required for a future high-speed railway. After segments were placed, they did not remain as separate concrete blocks. They had to become part of one continuous structural span. In segmental bridge construction, steel tendons or cables can be threaded through the concrete sections and tensioned. This post-tensioning helps tie the pieces together, compressing the concrete segments so they work as a stronger bridge element. In simple terms, the bridge is assembled from pieces, then locked together so those pieces act as one structure. That is what made the Colne Valley Viaduct more than a chain of concrete segments. It became a continuous railway bridge. Piece by piece, span by span, the deck advanced across the valley. Every segment was small compared to the landscape, but together, they became the longest railway bridge in the UK. The viaduct is also remarkable because of its form. It does not tower above the valley. It does not leap dramatically from one cliff to another. It stays low. The deck is carried about 10 meters above land and water. Some spans reach up to 80 meters, helping the structure pass over lakes and waterways with fewer supports in sensitive places. This gives the viaduct its distinctive rhythm: long concrete spans, slender piers, a gentle curve, water reflecting the bridge below. From a distance, the structure appears almost to skim across the landscape. The design idea was not a wall across the valley, but a sequence of light touches, like a stone skipping across water. That image matters because it explains the intention. The bridge had to cross the Colne Valley, but it also had to avoid overwhelming it. In mega construction, bigger is often louder, taller, heavier, more visible. But here, the engineering challenge was different. The structure had to be strong enough for high-speed rail, but quiet enough to belong in the valley. That does not mean the project had no impact. Large infrastructure always changes the place where it is built. But the design and construction method were shaped around reducing disruption, limiting the number of supports in water where possible, and integrating the viaduct into the landscape. HS2 says, environmental measures around the project included habitat creation, water quality management, ecological monitoring, and landscape work. The goal was not simply to cross the valley, it was to cross it in a controlled way. As construction continued, the bridge slowly transformed from isolated supports into a single line. At first, there were foundations and piers. Then, the launching gantry arrived. Then, the first spans connected. Then, more segments were lifted. The pale concrete deck extended farther and farther across the valley, until separate pieces became one continuous route. In September 2024, the final giant precast deck segment was installed. That was a major milestone. But completing the deck was not the same as completing an operating railway. A railway bridge is not finished when concrete meets concrete. After the deck comes the finishing work. Parapets, drainage, waterproofing, noise barriers, structural health monitoring, inspection, and preparation for railway systems. The bridge had to move from civil structure to railway infrastructure. That transition matters, because a high-speed rail viaduct is not just a bridge. It is part of a larger system. The deck has to carry the track has to carry the train has to move safely at high speed, and every part of the route has to work together. By 2025, civil engineering works on the Colne Valley Viaduct were marked complete. The next stage is railway systems installation, before the structure can become part of an operating high-speed route. So when people see the viaduct today, they are seeing more than a completed concrete deck. They are seeing the foundation of a future railway system. The story of this bridge is not only about length, it is about method. Britain did not just build a long railway bridge across the Colne Valley. It manufactured the bridge in pieces. It built the supports with precision. It used a giant launching gantry to assemble the deck from above. It crossed lakes, roads, a river, and a canal. It followed a gentle curve through the landscape. And it did all of this while trying to keep the structure low, controlled, and visually integrated with the valley below. That is what makes the Colne Valley Viaduct such a powerful engineering story. It is a record-breaking structure, but it is not designed to feel like a monument. It is a working piece of infrastructure, a long concrete path for future high-speed trains, a bridge shaped by water, landscape, geometry, and construction sequence. Every pier marks a decision. Every span marks a crossing. Every segment marks a moment when the bridge advanced farther across the valley. And when the launching gantry moved forward, the bridge moved with it, one piece at a time, one span at a time, one section of landscape at a time. The Colne Valley Viaduct shows that modern infrastructure is not always about overpowering difficult places. Sometimes, it is about crossing them with control. It is about finding a construction method that reduces the need to work everywhere at once. It is about building from above, while protecting as much as possible below. It is about precision on a massive scale. From the air, the viaduct is a pale curve across green and blue. From the ground, it is a low structure passing over water and land. From an engineering perspective, it is foundations, piers, bearings, precast segments, post-tensioning, drainage, barriers, monitoring systems, and future railway components. But as a story, it is something simpler. A high-speed railway needed to cross a valley. The valley was too complex for a simple solution. So engineers built the UK's longest railway bridge and launched it across the landscape one segment at a time. This is where high-speed rail meets landscape engineering, and where Britain launched its longest railway bridge across the Colne Valley.